The respiratory system. Respiration is a vital process in all living organisms. It goes on non-stop throughout life. Respiration is a chemical process of releasing energy by breaking down glucose for carrying out life processes. The energy liberated in the breakdown of the glucose molecule is not all in the form of heat, but a large part of it is converted into chemical energy in the form of ATP, a chemical substance called adenosine triphosphate. There are five important points to remember about the chemical reaction of respiration. This part of respiration yielding energy occurs inside the living cells and hence it is better known as cellular respiration. The breakdown of glucose to CO2 and water does not occur in a single step but in a series of chemical steps. Some of these steps occur in the cytoplasm of the cell and some inside the mitochondria. Each breakdown step is due to a particular enzyme. Animals need more energy. The need for production of energy is greater in animals than in plants. This is because animals consume more energy in doing physical work. They have to move about for obtaining food or run away to escape enemies. They have to chew their food and have to look after the eggs or young ones and so on. Among the animals, the birds and mammals need still more energy. The birds and mammals, including ourselves, have also to produce a lot of heat for keeping the body warm. This heat comes through respiration in the cells. The amount of heat to keep the body warm is quite large. The shivering and clattering of teeth when we feel cold is an emergency activity of the muscle cells to produce extra heat. Now, coming to the substrate for respiration, glucose is the most available substrate for respiration. It has no alternative for respiration. If glucose is not available directly, the cells may break down the proteins or fats to produce glucose for respiratory needs. Take the example of flesh eaters. The main constituent of the diet is protein with very little carbohydrates. The excess amino acid absorbed through protein digestion are broken down in the liver to produce sugar, and the nitrogenous part is converted into urea, which gets excreted out. The glucose thus produced may be used immediately or may get stored in the liver cells as glycogen for future needs. There are two kinds of respiration. In animals, there is normally aerobic respiration using oxygen. Anaerobic respiration, which occurs in the absence of oxygen, is only exceptional in some cases, as in the tapeworms living inside the human intestines. It may occur even in our body in the fast working skeletal muscles temporarily. During continuous physical exercise, as in fast running, walking over long distances, swimming, wrestling, weightlifting, etc., our muscles work too fast but not getting enough oxygen. In this situation, the muscles are working in the absence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration takes place to provide extra energy. The amount of anaerobic respiration in such muscles is lactic acid. Accumulation of lactic acid gives the feeling of fatigue. This is a condition which may be called oxygen debt. So, if you are asked to define what is oxygen debt, it is the extra amount of energy that must be supplied to the body after exercise in order to restore metabolic system back to the pre-exercise state. So, when we rest after such exercise, the lactic acid gets slowly oxidized by the oxygen later available, and then the date is cleared, producing carbon dioxide in the process. Anaerobic respiration in animals is a very slow process. It cannot continue for a long time. The product lactic acid has a toxic effect on the cells which causes muscle fatigue and aches. No carbon dioxide is produced. Total energy released per mole of glucose is much less compared to aerobic respiration. Now let us understand the various parts of respiration. In humans, as in most other animals, there are four major parts of respiration. The first, breathing or ventilation. This is a physical process in which the atmospheric air is taken in and forced out of the oxygen absorbing organs, the lungs. Number two, external gaseous exchange that occurs between the air in the lungs and the blood. Number three, the gaseous transport. The oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood is transported to the various parts of our body through blood. And finally, internal gas exchange, that is between the blood and the tissues. Aerobic respiration involves both tissue respiration as well as gaseous exchange. The external respiration or gaseous exchange is a process of oxygen transfer from the surrounding air or water to cells and transfer of products of respiration, that is carbon dioxide and water, from cells to the surrounding medium, that is air or water. Breathing part of gaseous exchange, muscular contractions and movement of ribs resulting in the movement of air in and out of the lungs is also a part of external respiration. In internal respiration or tissue respiration, the oxidation of food molecules with the liberation of energy occurs in cells, tissues of living organisms. In this slide, let us see the difference between breathing and respiration. Breathing is a physical process wherein the fresh air is taken in and the foul air is removed. Or we can say oxygen-rich air is entering our lungs and we are releasing carbon dioxide-rich air. No energy is released, rather used. It's a extracellular process. No enzymes are involved and there are certain organs which help us in the process of breathing. Coming to respiration, it is the oxidation of food to form carbon dioxide, water and energy. It's a biochemical process. Energy is released in the form of ATP. It's a process which occurs inside the cell and a large number of enzymes are involved. It occurs in all the cells of the body. Now let us understand how the various gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, are transported through blood. Most oxygen is transported by the red pigment present in the RBC, that is hemoglobin. Oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. A very small amount of oxygen is also transported in solution in the blood plasma. Coming to the transport of carbon dioxide in blood, carbon dioxide is dissolved in blood plasma as bicarbonate ion. In this slide, you can see that carbon dioxide reacts with water to form carbonic acid. The enzyme responsible here is carbonic anhydrase. The carbonic acid once formed dissociates into hydrogen and bicarbonate ions. So, we can say that the carbon dioxide released by the body cells can be transported in three ways. 7% of the carbon dioxide is transported as carbonic acid, that is CO2 dissolved in water in the blood plasma. 23% is transported as a compound that is formed by the combination of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin. And the compound that is formed is carbaminohemoglobin. And 70% of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate ions, which is formed by the dissociation of carbonic acid. Now, why do we need a respiratory system? Naturally, the gases that are used for respiration, that is oxygen, it has to be transported at the site of the respiration, that is to the cells, so that food can be oxidized and the energy can be released. During this process of respiration, carbon dioxide is produced, so we cannot allow the carbon dioxide to get accumulated in the cells. They have to be removed out of the body. So, the respiratory organs that form the respiratory system helps us in this process. Now we are going to understand the structure and function of the different organs that are involved in the respiratory system. The respiratory system in humans consists of air passages: the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and the lungs. The nose. The external part of the nose bears two openings, that is nostrils, separated by cartilaginous septum. The hairs present in the nostrils prevent large particles from entering the system. The two nostrils open into a pair of nasal chambers. The inner lining of the nasal chambers perform three functions. It warms the air as it passes over. Secondly, it adds moisture to the air. And third, it mucus secretion entraps harmful particles. So it is always advised that we should breathe through the nose and not through the mouth. An additional function of the nose is to smell. The sensory cells of smell are located in a special pocket situated high up in the nasal chamber. When we smell something special, we give a little sniff, which carries the odor up into this pocket. Next, the pharynx. The nasal chambers open at the back into a wide cavity, the pharynx, situated at the back of the mouth. It is a common passage for air and food. It leads into an air tube, the trachea or windpipe, and a food tube, esophagus, located dorsally behind the trachea. When not in use, the food tube is partially collapsed as it has soft walls. The entrance to the trachea is guarded by a flap called epiglottis, which closes it at the time of swallowing food. Incomplete closure of epiglottis during swallowing causes cough. The larynx. The larynx or the voice box, popularly called Adam's apple, is a hollow cartilaginous structure located at the start of the windpipe. You can feel it when your fingers in the front part of your neck. When you swallow something, this part rises and falls. The larynx contains two ligamentous folds called vocal cords. Air expelled forcibly through the vocal cords vibrates them, producing sound. By adjusting the distance between the two cords and the tension by means of attached muscles, a range of sounds can be produced. The voice is the sound produced by the vocal cords of the larynx. And speech is a character given to the voice by the complex movements of lips, cheeks, tongue, and jaws. Speech consists of words or syllables and it's a speciality of only the human species. The trachea and bronchi. The trachea or the windpipe emerges from the larynx down below in the neck, where it is partly covered by the thyroid gland. Its walls are strengthened by C-shaped cartilaginous rings, the incomplete parts of the rings being on the backside. The rings provide flexibility and keep the trachea distended permanently. Close to the lungs, the trachea divides into two tubes called the bronchi, which enter the respective lungs. On entering the lungs, each bronchus divides into fine secondary bronchi, which further divides into still finer tertiary bronchi. The cartilaginous rings, as those present on the trachea, are also present on the smaller bronchi to keep them distended. Bronchioles are the subsequent still finer tubes of tertiary bronchi, which acquired a diameter of about 1 millimeter and are without cartilage rings. By repeated branching, the bronchioles ultimately end in a cluster of tiny air chambers called the air sacs or alveoli. A network of blood capillaries surrounds the walls of each alveolus. The walls of the alveoli are extremely thin and moist, thus allowing gaseous diffusion through them. Oxygen from air first dissolves in a thin layer of water or fluid that covers the surface of alveoli. The entire inner lining of the larynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles is formed of ciliated epithelium. During lifetime, the cilia are constantly in motion, driving any fluid that is on them and also any particles that may have come in the air towards the mouth. The lungs. They are a pair of spongy and elastic organs formed by the air sacs, their connecting bronchioles, blood vessels, etc. The two lungs are roughly cone shaped, tapering at the top and broad at the bottom. The left lung has two lobes and the right lung has three. The left lung is slightly smaller to accommodate the heart in between. Each lung is covered by two membranes, the inner visceral pleura and the outer parietal pleura, with the watery fluid, the pleural fluid, in the pleural cavity found between the two membranes. This arrangement provides lubrication for free movement of the expanding and contracting lungs. The lungs occupy the greater part of the thoracic cavity. They are located close to the inner surface of the thoracic wall and the lower bases closely rest on the diaphragm. The blood supply to the lungs. The right auricle pumps all the deoxygenated blood received in it from the body into the right ventricle, which in turn pumps it into the lungs through the main pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery, soon after its emergence, divides into two branches, entering the respective lungs. Inside the lungs, they divide and redivide several times to ultimately form capillaries around the air sacs. Veins arising from these capillaries join and rejoin to form two main pulmonary veins from each lung, which pour the oxygenated blood into the left auricle of the heart. In the next presentation, we will continue with the physiology of the breathing process, that is inspiration and expiration, and the control of the breathing movements, the various capacities of the lung, and how the inspired air differs from the expired air, and few other topics. So So, till then, have a good day.